Welcome to the Undercovers cast. I'm Ben along with Paul, and thank you again to Paul and Connor for holding things down the last couple weeks because I was feeling a little bit under the weather, but we got a very exciting show tonight. The Bills made a blockbuster trade. I mean, there was actually a pair of blockbuster trades uh, today, which we will get in a little bit, as well as a breakdown the Bills' big divisional win over the Jets last night on Monday Night Football. So, Paul, let's kick this thing off tonight.
Yeah, glad you're back. It's been a vacant few weeks without you listening to you and your great football takes. So glad you're back and ready to go for the remainder of the football season. But college football has also been as much chaotic as the NFL. Like the last 2 weeks, you could say probably since week 0. So, who is the best player right now in college football? Is it Aston Genty or is it Travis Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I like Hunter a lot. Like what he's doing is truly remarkable. He's the best defensive back in the nation, as well as a very capable receiver as well. But what Ashton Genty is doing right now is nothing short of completely ridiculous. Just to kind of put it in perspective, he has 841 rushing yards after contact, which would actually put him as the number 4 rusher in the nation, and that's just after contact. He already has 1,248 rushing yards, long of 77. I mean, he is just an absolute machine, and I think it will carry over to the next level. But nothing against Travis Hunter, but I'm going with Ashton GT.
Ashton Genty right now has 9.9 yards per carry, and that's put this in perspective. Derrick Henry's final season at Alabama when he won the Heisman, he only averaged 5.6 yards per carry, and he's only 971 yards away
Wow.
from what Derrick Henry had in his final season at Alabama when he won the Heisman. So you talk about Ashton Genty, he's just the next Derrick Henry, but he seems like he's going to be better than Derrick Henry. And you flip it, yes, you could flip it to Travis Hunter. He plays both sides of the ball, but this isn't baseball. You can't be Shohei Ohtani in the
Right.
NFL. You have to pick wide receiver or cornerback. So going to the
And that's
next
an
level.
interesting topic too, because I mean, he could definitely make more money as a wide receiver, but he might be better as a corner.
Yeah.
But I am interested to see if maybe a team uh gotta mute my notifications. I don't know if you heard that. But anyways, uh I mean, it'll be interesting. Maybe a team will like break out a red zone package for him or something, or he'll kind of
Mhm.
do what you remember back in the day they had Mike Vrabel catching touchdown passes from Tom
Yes.
Brady. Even
Mhm.
JJ Watt has caught some touchdowns
Yep.
when he was in Houston. So it will be interesting. Let's get into our next quick take, which revolves around the Jets, ironically, who played last night, and Joe Douglas, or was it maybe the actual general manager and Aaron Rodgers, was probably not happy with last night's performance. And what they decided to do was go out and pretty much trade for Devontae Adams immediately. And reports were he was even in the building as soon as last night. So they must have worked out a
Mhm.
trade last night. I can just imagine Rodgers after the game, either storming to Woody Johnson's office or whatever. I mean, he pretty much runs that team at this point. We've seen
He
Salah
does.
get fired in the past week. And honestly, last night, say what you want about Robert Salah, but she maybe should have fired Hackett earlier or not let Aaron have as much control of the team. But I get it was Ulbricht's first game at the helm of head coach, but it kind of looked like the Salah issues still were bleeding over with the undisciplined play, the penalties. I mean, the defense that's probably the worst I've seen the Jets defense look. I mean, the Bills had how many total yards of offense? I think almost 400. I know at least over 300 if I'm not mistaken. I think they had like 375 or something like that, which you don't really see against a Jets defense. I mean, Josh really wasn't under much duress. I mean, there was a couple times he had to escape pressure, but the run game pretty much did whatever it could. But I mean, do you feel this trade really improves them when they have a lot of other holes on the roster? I mean, you even look at the O-line. The O-line was pretty susceptible last night and this season. And that run defense, I mean, Ray Davis really had no issue on every single time he touched the football.
Yeah, that Jets defensive line looked really bad last night. Probably the worst it's looked against the Buffalo Bills in a long while.
Right,
I mean,
for
they were
sure.
just getting pushed over by the Bills offensive line. And I personally don't think the Davante Adams trade, improves the Jets. Who do they replace Mike Williams with? They replaced him with, Davante Adams, who's yes, Davante Adams is if you face them head to head, Davante Adams is definitely better than what Mike Williams is. But the contract is, they rework that contract, but that contract, if things just don't work out, the Jets are in cap hell for a long period of time after this. That offensive line doesn't look good. Aaron Rodgers, he's been an old man in a walker for like 3 weeks now. That
Right.
O-line cannot protect him.
I
So
agree. He hasn't
what
really looked
else is the Jets
necessarily good.
offense going to do? I don't think the Adams trade pushes me to say I'm now afraid of the Jets passing attack.
Right. For sure. I mean, it could improve maybe their quick game passing, but you got to think Rodgers has to get the ball out a lot faster. I mean, I think they ran the ball to an extent last night, but I also think that's kind of what the Bills wanted them to do, and they still got stops when they needed to in the red zone and at the end of the game. And this is a team that's identity should be built on running the football and playing defense, and that's really not something they're able to do. And now they're gonna have to be a team that drops back, throws it 30 times a game. Adams will want his targets and need his targets. Same with Garrett Wilson. Now Lazard probably will be happy playing his role or whatever, because he was a guy who was almost off the team after his play last year. I mean, he definitely looks like a different player with Rodgers, but I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think it necessarily solves all of their issues. I'm not sure if they're able to just sit back there and pass it all day. I think teams will eventually kind of tee off on that. But let's move into our trivia portion of the night.
We all know that the Bills, acquired Amari Cooper. He now will wear the number 19. The Bills have 7 wide receivers in their history that has wore the number 19. Who are they?
7?
19. Yeah, there's 7 wide receivers that wore the number 19.
I know I can name at least 2 of them. Isaiah McKenzie, Mike Williams.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you're going to get the others.
Yeah, I'm gonna give up on the others.
Joe Defeek wore it in 89, in 84
okay, yeah,
to 80.
that's definitely one I wasn't gonna get.
Ferguson wore it in 80. Donald Jones wore it from
Donald Jones.
2010.
Okay, I should have got that one because that was my era of growing up in Bills football. I mean, I remember Donald Jones. He was solid. He just had injury histories. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he used to do One Bills Live, or was it the John Murphy show, whatever they used to call it with Murph. I don't know if you remember that.
It was the John Murphy show when
Okay,
Murphy was
you're
on.
right. It was the John Murphy show. But yeah, he used to be on the Bills radio network. I mean, he was a solid player for a couple years. Wasn't anything really special, but yeah, okay. And is that it? Those 4?
There's 2 more.
2
Walt
more?
Powell wore it from 15 to 16, and Jonathan Smith wore it from 04 to 05.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I really probably should have gotten Jones, but that was a great question. Now, let's guess move into the more meat and potatoes of the show, which will be our Bills portion of the evening. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong outline. I saw Bills Texans. All right.
Yeah, it's the same
Oh,
one. I
okay.
just
Okay.
forgot to
My bad.
change
My
it.
bad.
I
My
forgot
bad.
to
I
change
just,
it to that
you're
one.
good. That's what I saw first. Okay.
It's the same. It's the same outline. I
So
just
we
keep
saw
forgetting the
the
name of
Bills
it.
trade for Amari Cooper today, and that leads to, the first topic of the night is how does he improve the Bills offense? And I think not just the deep passing game, which is something we've seen the Bills not really have much success really over the last 2 seasons passing the ball down the field. Um, I think it will open up the entire offense as a whole, because if you get a guy like Amari Cooper who can stretch the field, that really changes how defenses have to play you. And we've seen more teams kind of play a single high coverage against the Bills, which ironically in the past they've struggled against two high safety, and this year they've been really good against a two high safety. Now with a guy like Amari Cooper, you would think teams are going to have to play more too high, and that's going to open things up underneath. That's going to open up the run game more, which we saw yesterday. I mean, I think the whole mantra everyone eats, I think that can still kind of be a thing here. I mean, I think we saw yesterday Keon kind of be a player in the short passing game, which I think is something they really have failed to utilize him with, up until last night. And I mean, we finally saw him on a wide receiver screen. One wasn't successful, but that clip last week that went viral of the RPO going off his helmet that everyone was trying to crush him about. Well, last night, if you noticed, he caught an RPO on, I think it was either a second one or a third and one, and it led to a first down. So, I mean, that connection, we know he's a rookie, is going to take some time. So, in my opinion, I just think this opens up the Bills' offense in a lot of different ways. They finally have more explosive playmakers. I mean, now Shakir can even move to the slot more. I mean, you could do different things and move around Curtis Samuel as well. And we finally saw Curtis Samuel make some big plays last night down the field. So now you have a couple guys, honestly, who you can use to stretch out defenses. And then underneath, you can just throw it to Shakir, Kincaid, or even Coleman. So to me, it opens up the Bills' offense in a lot of different ways.
It really does. I mean, just like you said with Keon last night, we used Keon in more than one way last night. This really just opens up the Bills wide receiver room. I mean, it could even open up a guy like Dalton Kincaid, who had a decent night last night. We just haven't seen the full version of Dalton Kincaid. Also, this opens the deep passing game for the Buffalo Bills. This really does give Josh Allen that weapon, 20 plus yards down the field. In the last 5 years, Amari Cooper has 78 vertical routes in the last 5 seasons. Amari Cooper has 78 receptions. That's fourth in the NFL. 2005 yards. That's sixth in the NFL, and 20 touchdowns. That makes him sixth in the NFL over the last 5 seasons on vertical routes. So Josh Allen, we all know who's one of the better deep ball passers in the NFL, gets one of the best vertical route runners in the NFL. I mean, it's a marriage that is going to be perfect, and you just hopefully on Sunday against the Titans, the first play off the get go, it's a 70-yard bomb to Amari
Right?
Cooper, and the crowd
Yeah.
goes wild.
I mean, you even saw today, it kind of seemed like that marriage in Cooper, or with Cleveland with Cooper, kind of was, it kind of failed. And maybe he threw some shots at Deshaun on the way out with that Instagram post. But I agree completely on just a guy who could stretch the field. And I mean, we saw the offense even last night kind of evolve more with Ray Davis getting more in the fold. I know a lot of us were hoping for that more of a power back to complement Cook. And to me, I think the potential of Ray Davis in this offense, we can almost have a Detroit like running game. I'm just kind of envisioning, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of that style of rush attack with Ray Davis being the Montgomery type and Cook being the Gibbs type, and you have a thunder and lightning type thing, a guy who has power and then a guy who has more of that speed element. I mean, you could even throw Ty Johnson in the mix. I mean, last night, Ty Johnson, I think Ty Johnson should have maybe even gotten more touches because I think he only had 4 carries all night for like 36 yards. He kind of showed off his speed on some plays, and even in Houston, he had a big run. So to me, I'm thinking of a rush attack that almost resembles what the Lions have.
Yeah, I mean, one of the comparables for Ray Davis was coming out of college, out of Kentucky, was David Montgomery. I mean, he's small, but he's mighty. Like the wheels just keep going on him. Like he minute he gets hit, those wheels are still going. He doesn't go down. He's not an easy running back to get down. And I think, to be honest with you, he wears the number 22. Who wore the number 22 for the Bills for so many years? Fred
Yes, I was
Jackson,
just gonna
and the
say the
same thing.
same thing. I think he might be a little smaller in height than
Mhm.
Freddie,
Yeah.
but he really, in a lot of ways last night, it reminded me of Freddie, just that tough, hard-nosed running style. He doesn't really dance around in the backfield a lot. He hits the holes hard, and I mean, he does a really good job of, even fighting after contact. So I really like what I've seen in Ray Davis, and I think he's a piece that continue, to help evolve this offense from what we saw the first couple weeks of the season. And I mean, that will include Cooper as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ray Davis averaged 5.7 yards per carry in his final season at Kentucky. Last night, Ray Davis, I don't know the actual average. Let's see, he averaged about 4.8 yards a
I mean,
carry.
that's
So
still really
he
good. Anything near 5 is phenomenal. And
mhm.
we heard about his receiving ability. How about 3 catches for what, 55 yards, including that deep ball? I
Yeah,
mean, it wasn't the prettiest catch at first, but I mean, he still got it, which is all that really
hands
counts
are hands.
right at the end of the day. I mean, he's got soft hands, so that's something, use him in the passing game. I mean, use both him and Cook on the field at the same time. I mean, just think about the different possibilities that Joe Brady can now dip into because he's got 4 solid wide receivers, the 2 tight ends, and 3 very good running backs. So, I mean, this Bills offense can really, I think, adapt to the type of defense they're facing and break out some unique personnel packages going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, different personnels, even at the goal line, Ray Davis could be an important piece. That was one of his strengths coming out of college. Coming out of college was his ability to score at the goal line. And you've seen it last night when the Bills were in goal line packages and in a few times, they were just continuing to give it to Ray Davis. And what Ray Davis was continuing to do is get 3-4 yards inside the red zone. So, with the Bills having one of the better red zone scoring offenses in, not really using Ray Davis, what they seen out of Ray Davis last night was, okay, now we have a weapon that we can go to inside the 20, even inside the 5. You give it to him. We don't always have to give it to Josh in the red zone and have him use his legs. We can give it to Ray Davis. He could, power his way in for 6, numerous of times. So, Ray Davis has, that Fred Jackson type ability.
Right.
He
It
has
made me
that
Frank Gore.
ceiling.
I heard you kind of say, it almost sounded like you were saying Frank, but I mean, he does kind of remind me of Frank Gore too,
Yeah,
ironically, with
Frank
that
Gore
tough
too. Small
running
but
style.
mighty.
And it's actually funny because I don't know if you remember this, but Frank Gore actually said, obviously, besides Frank Jr., who was active last night, just didn't get any action. He was Frank Gore's senior's favorite running back from this draft class.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fun
Um,
facts.
yep, it is a fun fact. That's something he said after the draft. Another point from last night. I'm sure a lot of us Bills fans got some bad flashbacks from the Hail Murray when Rodgers dropped back
Oh
and
man.
unleashed that Hail Mary,
Oh,
and it almost, I mean, that was a point where the Bills were kind of cruising, and you had another Sean McDermott moment of him calling a timeout, playing extremely soft defense. And I mean, just from the get go, what went wrong on that play started with the defensive timeout there, allowing Rodgers to draw something up. You allowed the Jets, who didn't have any timeouts, to kind of say, all right, let's do this Hail Mary play. And the Bills, for some reason, decided to only rush two players and then guard the boundaries with their defensive ends. And
yeah.
as we saw numerous times in big games, obviously you think back to the Hail Murray. But even the Vikings game from a couple years back, that Justin
Mhm.
Jefferson play where he mossed Cam Lewis, the
Yeah.
Bills keep trying to go for interceptions in points in games where the game would be over if they just bat the ball down. And to me, I mean, that's something that McDermott really needs to drive home
Yeah.
with these players. Like, there's no need for an interception right there. Like, the game is over. All he has to do is just knock the ball down. And that, I mean, I think that was kind of rapping Hamlin, but I mean, even Taron Johnson kind of just let Allen Lazard just absolutely moss him.
Yeah. That was, you talk about, the importance of where that happened. It was toward the end of the half. The Bills were cruising, and you go into halftime, could be going to halftime up 10, but now you're, you know, going into halftime up 3. Even though you do get the ball back in the third quarter, the second half only showed 6 combined points in the entire second half. Yes, that was for a multitude of things. I mean, both offenses really couldn't get much going. There was horrible flags, whatever. That was the second half. Just imagine if the second half flipped and it was a shootout type game, which it could have been. It should have been. That Hail Mary could have cost you, the game. It could have cost you 7 costly points and could have lost the Bills the game if the game came down to the one final play. I don't get the defensive setup at all. I
Right.
mean, why is Groot and AJ in coverage? Like,
Yeah. I
why?
mean, that's what I
You're
mentioned earlier. It really made no sense because
No
the
one
Jets
is
wouldn't
going to
have
go in
had
the middle
time
of
to
the
get
field.
I mean, honestly, if anything, allow the Jets to get into field goal range with how Zerline was kicking yesterday. I mean, I know he didn't miss
Yeah.
any until the end of the game, but with those wind conditions, it was very unlikely that they were going to make the type of kick we saw um the the
Mhm.
Texans make last week.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a failure on many fronts. And I mean, hopefully going forward, that's something that gets cleaned up. But
Keon will be there next time, Sean
right, I
McDermott
mean, it
said.
did he actually say that?
Yeah, he said, Keon Coleman might be used in some of the Hail Mary packages.
I mean, I actually like that. I mean, if you remember back in the day, that's what the Bills used to do on Hail Marys. I mean, I remember um, that Houston game. I think it was maybe 2016 or 2015. It may have been 2015. Watson tried to no, that was before Watson, but whoever the Houston quarterback was at the time, and maybe it was still Schaub, they tried to get off a Hail Mary, and I believe Watkins or Woods was down there and either broke it up or picked it off. So I mean, we've seen Gronk, defend on Hail Marys before. So
Yeah.
I mean, at least McDermott is kind of recognizing some of his flaws at this point and kind of adapting. Um, and then let's get into our standouts from the game. I'd love to hear who yours was.
Mine is going to be on the defensive side of the football because the defense really just locked down in the second half after a wild first half. A lot of things went wrong on defense in the first half. I'm going to give it the Taylor wrap this week. his ability to read the quarterback and just watch Aaron Rodgers where the football is going to go, and then at 3 separate occasions does that perfectly and breaks up 3 important passes. The one in the end zone to Garrett Wilson. I think it was the one over the middle of the field to extend the Jets' drive at one point in the game. And he's just been a force all season, with pass breakups and just really just being a safety valve and at the safety position for the Buffalo Bills, which was one of the main questions heading into the season. He only has a 25% completion percentage against him, and he's only allowed 20 yards against him. So Rapp has stepped up in a big way this season. He stepped up in 3 massive occasions last night that, if he doesn't step up, that's momentum changing,
Well, the
that's
game's
drive
over.
changing and
He
game.
sa-
Yeah.
he saved 2 touchdowns, and
Yeah.
then he had that big incompletion on Ruckert where he just absolutely rocked him. That was just textbook safety play right there. And I know there's a lot of Bills fans that I'll admit it, I was included in the majority that was not necessarily pleased in Rap getting an extension this offseason after last year where he really kind of was underwhelming at times up until the wrap
Mhm.
on the season play in Miami.
Yeah.
But he has really filled in nicely for Poyer, and it even leads me to question: uh, does that miscommunication touchdown happen against Houston if Rapp is back there? And
Yeah.
that was a big play in that game. I mean, he missed it obviously with a concussion. We saw now he's wearing the Guardian cap. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy going forward. Now, I still have concerns with DeMar at safety.
It's a little bit there. Yeah.
I would say my preferred safety tandem right now would be Edwards and Rapp. Now you wonder if Edwards is still maybe dealing with some lingering injury issues, and that's maybe why they haven't played him necessarily in a lot of volume. But I think Hamlin is a good piece to use in 3 safety looks where you're trying to defend the run, maybe instead of an extra linebacker. But to me, I guess my standout, you stole mine. I'll go with someone else's. I mean, Josh last night was phenomenal. We already talked about Ray Davis and gave him his flowers. He obviously was our player of the game. I guess I'll go Dorian Williams. He's a player
Yeah, there you
that
go.
has
Yep.
really started. I mean, he did have a play on Brees Hall where, I mean, it wasn't in completion, just off a drop where he kind of lost him in coverage. He still has to work on his coverage, but he's a guy who's really been good against the run recently. He is really almost always near the ball and doesn't miss a lot of tackles. And I know that was a big concern was him starting this year for a lot of people in place of Matt Milano, but I think he's filled in very nicely recently, and it may not be a bad thing to get him game reps and experience, especially if you don't know, what Milano's long-term future is with the team. I mean, I think it's clear to say Dorian is probably part of the equation for starting at linebacker going forward. So it's nice to see Dorian Williams finally starting to come into his own. And I think he's starting to develop very nicely. So let's get
Very
into our game
important
picks
piece.
now.
Just one small little standout here, just to,
Yep.
some flowers to AJ Epinesa,
Oh,
a
yes.
two-sack night. He started the season slow, but it seems like AJ Epinesa the last few weeks is starting to turn into the AJ Epinesa that we know that he can be.
And even Groot has made a couple plays last night. He still, I think, needs to do more, especially in a contract year. I wouldn't give him a big contract yet, but it is nice to see him. I mean, how about Daquan Jones? He had his first sack of the season
Yeah,
last night, a big play that kind of
massive
killed
one.
Jets momentum. So, yeah, definitely shout out to the D line, I still think is a little underwhelming at times, but they made plays when plays were needed.
Absolutely, that D line, really adjusted. This game really reminded me the Bills Cardinals week 1, where it just started slow. It looked sloppy at the beginning. Bobby Babich at halftime made all those adjustments that needed, and the Bills came out firing in the second half against Arizona. Same thing here. It looked sloppy in the first half against the Jets, and it came out in the second half, and they really just shut down the Jets defense. The Jets offense in massive ways. They took the momentum out of the game. Yes, in the help of, random nuisance penalties, but I think overall, last night you just saw the shift in adjustments throughout the entire game, offensively and defensively, which, the last 2 weeks where the Bills lost games was lack of adjustments, just sloppy football all over the place. So really good props to the Bills coaching staff, on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball, making the adjustments when it mattered.
100%.
All right. Game picks this week. So let's go over the game picks. I have the records for each of us. I'm at 12-13. Ben, you're at 13-12. Connor surprisingly has a game lead over you with 14-11.
Okay.
You went 5-0 in week 5.
Wow. This year has just kind of been very unpredictable. I feel like there's been a lot of parity and a lot of close games. But hopefully, I'm able to get my lead back.
Hopefully, you can get your lead back because we got 9 picks this week. Three in the college level, 6 in the NFL. Let's start in the NFL first. Green Bay hosting the Houston Texans. Connor went Houston. Who do you got?
I'm actually gonna go Green Bay. I think now that Love is back and healthy, that offense is starting to round into form. They've had a very good running game. I think the issues that plagued Buffalo against Houston, which was wide receivers not being able to get open, isn't going to be the case with Green Bay, who has 4 very capable offensive weapons at the receiving position, and a play caller that is very good at scheming his guys open. So I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers here.
I'm going to agree with you. I feel like the Green Bay Packers still don't look like the Green Bay Packers as the past. Jordan Love hasn't been playing to the same level as he was last year, but they looked really good last night. They looked really good last week against, I forget who they played, but Green Bay seems like they're heading in the right direction. Give me Green Bay. How about an NFC North battle? Vikings coming off a bye. They are undefeated. They're facing the Lions, who just completely clobbered Jerry Jones on his birthday.
Ooh. Is this in Detroit or Minnesota, by the way?
Minnesota.
Minnesota has looked very good this year, especially at home. This is arguably 2 of the better offensive minds in football right now, going head to head. We actually have a couple of these type of matchups. You can even include Slowick versus LaFleur in another game in our game picks. I know. It's tough. This is almost a flip a coin.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point though where Detroit is kind of rounding into form for the season, where they're almost unbeatable with that offense. And I think they're the one team that can probably give this Brian Flores defense a run for their money. Even without Hutchinson, the defense still played very strong. They still have some other good pieces on defense. I will be interested to seeing what their plan is to replace Hutchinson. Hopefully he's able to get back to form from that awful injury, because he was just having such an outstanding season. But I'll go with Detroit with the road win here.
Connor has Detroit in a road win. I'm going Detroit in the road win. So that means by unanimous vote, the Minnesota Vikings will go 6-0 this week.
Probably.
You're welcome, Vikings fans.
Probably. That's usually how it works, right?
That's normally how it works. But to all at the same points you said, the Lions just look unbeatable offensively. They're using a hook and ladder with an offensive lineman, making it look simple.
They had Dan Skipper lined out wide. They were just playing with their food. It was kind of, for someone who's not necessarily a Cowboys fan by any stretch, it was a very entertaining game, to say the least.
It was very entertaining. This is the biggest game on the slate this weekend. The rematch of the Super Bowl, the Chiefs going on the road to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, another matchup of 2 of the better offensive minds of football between Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan has yet to beat Andy Reid as a head coach, and I don't think that trend continues. And going to an even further extent, he has a 31-7 record out of the bye over his career, including 21-3 with the Chiefs. That is outstanding. Or sorry, 21-3 overall in the regular season, including 8-2 with the Chiefs. My bad. I read the wrong part, but 21-3 out of the bye week in the regular season is some pretty dang good numbers. I expect it to continue. They just kind of have San Fran's number. I know San Fran is looking for revenge, but they were a couple years ago too when they hosted Kansas City, and we saw another Chiefs offense that really didn't have a ton of talented skill positions put up 45 on that defense with ease. Now, I know they were missing Fred Warner in that matchup, so that is a big thing, but I still am going with the Chiefs until they're beaten. I can't really pick against them.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think, the Chiefs are always been the Chiefs. They're winning a lot of one score games. I mean, you go the last regular season meeting was last year in 2022, and the Chiefs just completely ran over the 49ers. Regular season wise, I think the Chiefs and the Chiefs have the 49ers number. Overall, the Chiefs had the 49ers number. It's Super Bowls, regular season matchups. You just spitted all those great stats with Andy Reid coming out of the bye. I mean, I have the Chiefs in this game. Connor has San Francisco, but I don't see any reason why the Chiefs can't win this football game and continue their undefeated season against a team that they notoriously know have their number.
Right.
Sunday Night Football is an interesting game. Now with Russell Wilson starting this weekend instead of Justin Fields for the Steelers at home against the Jets.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting matchup, especially when you throw that into the equation as well. And you do have potential Devontae Adams debut for the Jets. That being said, I watched last night's game and saw a Jets team that cannot stop the run. I know Pittsburgh has a very solid run scheme and run game with Arthur Smith, Najee Harris, and Jalen Warren. And just what I saw from Tyron Smith yesterday, if TJ Watt lines up against Tyron Smith head to head, that could be very bad things for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense. So I'm expecting probably a low scoring game just because of I don't think Pittsburgh's going to put up, in the 30s, and I don't expect the Jets to really be able to do much on offense against this Pittsburgh defense. So I'm going to go with the home team, and I think the Jets slide still continues and they'll lose their fourth straight game. Give me Pittsburgh.
This one was a toss up for me, just thinking about this game because, the Jets are heading in what is supposed to be their easiest 4-game stretch before their bye week. And, same thing with the Bills, this is probably their easiest stretch of the season. So this is going to be an important part for both Jets and the Bills to rack up some wins. The Jets offense still look like the Jets offense. That Jets defense, it's going to be a close defensive battle. Where I kind of give the edge in my mind in a close defensive battle, part of my mind says the Jets, but also part of my mind says the Steelers. Russell Wilson hasn't played a game this season. I'm going to take the Jets.
Interesting. All right. Let's go to our next game.
Next game's out in the desert. The Chargers and the Cardinals battling out in Arizona.
I think you'll be able to tell my pick pretty easily. Who's got it better than us? Nobody, because Jim Harbaugh and that scrappy Chargers team. Yes, yeah. I mean they were given some issue later on by Denver, but I think Denver's kind of a team, a sneaky team with Sean Payton and Knicks, who's actually been playing much better week by week. But that being said, the Cardinals have not been able to stop the run in the slightest this season. Washington, Buffalo, and Green Bay just ran all over them. And I think that's going to continue with the Chargers, their team that's not afraid to put 8 guys on the line and just
Yeah.
batter you until you're literally a pulp. And I get it's in Arizona, but it's not like they really have to travel more than a couple hours, down the coast. So give me the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, Harbaugh has the Chargers going in a new direction. They're going in a better direction. Arizona, they still look like the same old
And let
Arizona
me
team.
give you a quick hot take, by the way. What I've
Oh, go
seen
for it.
from
Love
this
hot takes.
AFC so far through the season, I think the Chargers get a wild card spot right now. They were kind of one of my under the radar teams before the season,
Mhm.
but I think there's no reason they can't with that run game and a pretty solid defense. I mean, Herbert's looked pretty good. He's kind of like Allen in the Bills offense. He doesn't have to do too much thanks to the O-line and run game. They're very well coached. I mean, I'm a big fan of this Chargers team.
I am too, so that's why Jim Harbaugh continues to keep the Chargers going the right direction. Connor, for some reason, doesn't agree with us. He thinks an upset will happen inside the desert. He has Arizona. The final NFL game that we're picking today happens on Monday night in a night doubleheader. The Ravens will have to go to Tampa Bay to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Another 2018 draft showdown between
Yeah.
quarterbacks, and
Hmm.
I'm actually going to pick an upset here. I think the first game back after Helene, I think the Bucks are going to want to play inspired football for that home crowd. I know the Ravens offense can be very daunting at times, but we saw Jaden Daniels and a rookie Commanders team give them everything they can handle in Baltimore last week or this past Sunday. And I'm a big fan of this Bucks offense, and their passing attack has been lethal with Baker Mayfield, 14 passing touchdowns on the season. Evans and Godwin are tied for the league lead in receiving touchdowns. So give me Tampa Bay.
You know, Helene, struck that area in horrible ways. You know, inspired football is definitely going to be played in Tampa Bay. They laid a 50 burger in New Orleans just this past weekend. But this Baltimore team is just this year, it seems. Their defense is still one of the better defenses in the league. It seems like they're turning it around, and that offense is starting to mold into form around Jackson and Henry. My mind says Baltimore, but it definitely certainly could be in an inspired Tampa Bay team on next Monday. Playing in front of the home crowd. Tampa is also going with Connor. Connor has Tampa in this game. That rounds out the 6 NFL games we're picking. That means we have 3 ranked games this weekend. You think October 12th was great weekend for football. You had a couple ranked games. You had that great nightcap with Oregon
I
and
mean,
Ohio
even
State.
LSU Ole Miss was an instant classic. If you missed the end
Yeah,
of that
that
one,
that
that
was
was
a
another
4-hour
ranked
instant
game.
classic.
Yeah. I I believe
Let's
our
start in Rocky Top, though,
yeah. I
as
mean,
Alabama has to go on the road to face the 11th ranked Volunteers in Rocky Top.
see, I know Tennessee's offense has kind of looked stagnant recently, but we've seen an Alabama defense that outside of that first half of that Georgia game where they dominated Georgia, they've kind of given up some points to some lower tiered SEC teams. And I think this could be the get right game that Tennessee needs. And even in the loss at Arkansas, it was because their offense wasn't able to do enough, and Nico at the end of the game for some reason pulled a Dak Prescott slash Kyle McCord and ran out the clock instead of trying to throw the ball into the end zone. But last game between these two teams in Rocky Top was an instant classic.
It was
I
amazing.
I think the home crowd and this Tennessee defense is good enough to they're not going to completely shut down Ryan Williams and Jalen Milrow, but I think they'll do enough. And I don't think this Alabama defense is necessarily good enough to completely shut out the Tennessee offense. So I'm going Vols in an upset.
Connor goes Alabama, who's favored in this game by 3. I'm taking the upset as well. I mean, there's nothing good about a college football weekend when Alabama goes down, and Alabama nearly went down last week to South Carolina. Arguably, they should have lost to South Carolina
Right.
at
South Carolina
home.
definitely outplayed them in the second half at
They
home.
did.
So that is something to definitely look at. Next we have Texas. Is it at Georgia or Texas?
It's in Texas.
Okay. So
College game day there.
even if this game was in Georgia, I think this Texas team is just the superior team in college football
Yeah.
right now
Mhm.
until a team can knock them down. And it's kind of funny, looking at Georgia now, looking up at Texas when Georgia had
I
just been
know, right?
so dominant over the past 3 seasons, only losing a combined 3 total games over the last 4 seasons. But I don't think this is the same Georgia team of old. They kind of let a bad Mississippi State team hang around for a while. So I'm going to go Texas in a big win over Georgia. I think this is going to be a statement game for them.
Connor went Texas. I went Texas last week, and I knew they were going to beat Oklahoma by large numbers because, Oklahoma was playing with like fifth, sixth, and seventh wide receivers. It was an easy win for Texas there. This is probably Texas's, first game where they're actually going to be tested just a little bit, just because of the magnitude of their schedule, and injuries happen, with Oklahoma. But Texas, like you said, has outright been the best team offensively and defensively in
And Quinn
college
Ewers
football.
is
No
playing as
match.
good. And I know he's rusty, but Quinn is playing as good as any, quarterback in the nation right now. I just think this is Texas team is different.
I think Georgia hangs around for a little while, but I think this has the expectation of a Texas win, and Texas should win this game, and I'm going to pick Texas to win. But I feel like this could be another game of the year where this just comes down to who gets the football last.
Could be
And I
right.
think Texas's defense, shuts down Georgia's offense, in the final few plays of the game. But our final game pick is a top 25 matchup in Champaign. Michigan will have to go on the road to face an Illinois team who just escaped Purdue at home. Who do you got?
Yeah, that Purdue Illinois game was completely drunk, but this is kind of a
Yeah, it
revenge
was
game
crazy.
for Illinois from a couple years ago. If you remember when Tommy DeVito was a quarterback in Ann Arbor, they gave them, and I know they had some more NFL talent on that team between Johnny Newton and the Brown brothers, but I still like what I've seen from this Illinois team this year with Altmaier quarterback.
Mhm.
I think Brett Bielema has done an outstanding job coaching that team, and I fully expect them to be ready for this game. And I don't think this is the same Michigan team of
No,
old. Like they've kind of hung around with some not so good teams. I think Illinois. It wouldn't be really be an upset because I believe they're ranked above Michigan currently, but I think
they
Illinois,
are, but Michigan's actually favored in this
right?
game.
But I think Illinois gets the underdog win. Um, so yeah, give me Illinois in the Vegas upset. Not really the top 25 upset, but according to Vegas, it would be an upset.
According to Vegas, this would be an upset. According to Connor, this is not an upset. He goes Michigan in this game. You know, give me the underdog upset in this game too.
I
Michigan.
like it.
Michigan doesn't feel like they should be ranked. They just
And
get
their
in.
quarterback play is subpar. So I think if Illinois' defense, I mean,
It's one of
they
the worst.
exactly. I mean, I think Illinois can have upset on their mind. So a very exciting slate of football coming up this week, and hopefully we see our first Allen Cooper connection, and the first of many. For even the next couple
Ooh.
seasons. I know he's yeah. I can't wait to hear the Coops and
I
Highmark.
know,
That's gonna be
right?
awesome. But I hope it's the first of many we see going forward. But between the two, I mean, I know this is technically the last year on his deal, but I hope that, being made this trade with at least a small, maybe 1 to 2 year extension in mind.
Yeah, I think the Bills, will have that in mind, just depending how this goes throughout the entire season. A small nugget on this trade. If the Bills decide not to, extend or resign Cooper after this year, they do get that that third round conditional pick back. So that could be
Okay.
something. That could be something
But
interesting.
it's still, it's a third rounder for a premier deep threat talent,
Hmm.
which is something we've lacked. And especially this draft, which looks like it could maybe be a little bit thinner at wide receiver. I mean, there's guys I like Trey Harris, but he might not necessarily be the deep threat that Cooper is. But I mean, if you can
Hmm.
add a Trey Harris to this room, I mean, it could be one of the best rooms in football, just between depending on how Keon develops. You still have Shakir, of course. And I think what benefits the Bills is Shakir was a slot receiver. So even if he says has a pretty good year this year and going forward, I think the Bills should be able to keep all of their receivers at least until Keon's due for an extension. But hopefully by that time, Cooper will already be gone, which would be, 3 more years. So I think that's what you're looking at is maybe a 3 year extension at most, maybe 1 to 2 after this. But I mean, I think Cooper still has a lot of good football in front of him.
You probably give Cooper, this year, and you probably give him, if he wants to extend, which I wouldn't think, there's no reason why he wouldn't want to extend. You're playing with Josh Allen, one of the best
Yeah.
quarterbacks in the
And
league.
and
You
say the
probably give him a
Bills the Bills are able
year
to
extension with the option to play.
right, exactly, 1 to 2 years. I think, depending on how the Bills finish the season, they could even, I mean, maybe he wants to run it back depending, if they're able to accomplish their ultimate goal. Because I think now that you add him to the mix, I mean, the offense, the sky is really the limit just as far as, what they can do between the run game and pass game. I think this is the best supporting cast that Josh Allen has ever had, including 2020, because if you remember 2020,
Hmm.
they had a second year Knox and Croft as their two tight ends. So their tight end room
Right.
is better. Their offensive line is significantly better. They have a better run game. And I mean, yes, you don't have Beasley, Brown, or Diggs, but I think Cooper, I mean, he's not 2020 Diggs, but I think he could be at least 80% of that. And I think Samuel and Shakir can play the Brown and Beasley role. And I think, like we've all said for a while, I think Keon, even at his worst, can be a souped up Gabe Davis. So I think if you look at all those pieces together, plus the O line running game, and I think Josh is more mature now. I mean, this has potential to be the best Bills offense under Josh Allen.
It lies in the hands of one, Joe Brady. It lies in his hands. You could say yes. This is Josh Allen's offense. It lies in his hands. Josh Allen has been one of the best quarterbacks this year. He still has 0 interceptions. He's a matured quarterback. He's a different quarterback this year. So it goes up to the play caller to get these guys, get these weapons, get these people open for Josh Allen to use them correctly. And it's up to Joe Brady to use all these weapons that he has at his hands, use different packages, whatever. You still have the everyone eats mantra with you. Now you have your number one wide receiver in Amari Cooper. It's at your hands to make this rest of the offense look good, play good for the next 12 weeks of the season.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting to see how this offense continues to evolve. We'll get to see that starting Sunday. That should wrap up this show tonight. Have a good night and go Bills.
Go Bills.